Our next speaker, Matt Heine, is Joint Managing Director of NetWealth Group. Matt started his career in financial services over 17 years ago when he joined NetWealth in July 2001. Matt's experience in sales, marketing and product brings a hands-on understanding to his role. Matt has a passion for advice, superannuation, investment and technology and is a regular media commentator and presenter on these topics. Please welcome Matt.
Garden was blessed by the gods of me and you. We anywheres for to find ourselves some truth.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning, everyone. It's been an absolutely fantastic couple of weeks on the road. I've thoroughly enjoyed travelling around with Ravi and Eleanor and the AFA crew, and I'd like to sincerely thank you for the opportunity to come and present to all of your members. So, speaking of travel, I've been fortunate. Earlier this year, I got to spend the better half of a month over in the US. I spent a week at Austin at South by Southwest, the world's largest interactive festival. I spent a week in San Francisco, and I spent 2 weeks in New York. And during that time, I had some absolutely riveting and fascinating conversations. I got to meet with fintech companies, I got to meet with big tech companies, I got to meet with investment managers, global asset consultants, global consultants, and importantly, financial planners. And there was a huge amount of conversation that was had over those 4 weeks. And whilst there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that things like blockchain, AI, machine learning and robotics have advanced dramatically over the last couple of years, and in many cases have moved from a nice to have for companies to a necessity or a requirement, if I was to talk about that, I'd be covering old ground. So today I'm going to talk about something completely different, something that I believe sits at the absolute centre of the world's most successful companies. The biggest companies today have worked out that to be successful and to grow in this environment, you need to be completely client-centric. You need to put the customer at the absolute centre of everything you do. The world's biggest tech companies and the world's biggest companies have managed to remove friction from all of their customer interactions. Can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's got young kids in the room, sort of 5 or 6? Yeah, lots of people. Okay, I want to introduce you to Teddy. Now, I have 3 kids. Teddy's not one of them, but just stick with me for the purpose of this exercise. It's the night before Teddy's 6th birthday, and he's absolutely gripped with excitement. His parents have allowed him to stay up late so that he can open some of the presents from his birthday party earlier in the day. He walks into the room, eyes off the biggest box, walks over and rips off all the wrapping paper, and inside is a brand new remote control car. He puts the car on the ground, grabs the remote control and inches the joystick forward. And nothing happens. There's no batteries in the car. It's late at night, there's no batteries in the house, and he's not able to get to the shops. Teddy goes to bed deflated, despondent, and totally disappointed. This was Teddy's first ever interaction with friction. So what is customer friction? Customer friction is anything that gets in the way of your customer or a potential customer completing the job or the activity that they set out to achieve. Friction can lead to abandonment. Think about the last time you rang Telstra or Foxtel and simply gave up or hung up because you couldn't get through to the person you needed to. There was too many options or the service just simply wasn't good enough. Friction can lead to frustration. So whilst one of your clients or a potential client might actually be able to complete the task that they set out to, they might feel really negatively about your brand or about your service. And at its absolute very worst, friction can lead to anxiety. I know myself, particularly over the last couple of weeks, I've been stuck in the check-in queue or going through customs, worried if I was going to miss my flight. In your own environment, think about how anxious your clients might be while they're waiting to find out if a loan's been approved for their new house or investment property. Think about how anxious they might be waiting to find out if their life insurance or their general insurance claim might be paid. They have no visibility over the process. So the real point that I want to make today is that less friction is the new norm. Your clients expect you to remove friction from absolutely every single interaction. And the reason for this is that our clients are no longer comparing us to other financial planners. They're no longer comparing us to financial institutions or other banks. They are comparing us to the world's biggest tech companies. And the reason for this is because our expectations of service or our expectations of a good experience are set by the last company that we interacted with. And increasingly our clients are interacting with Googles and Facebooks. They may have checked their Facebook feed or their Instagram feed in on the way to see you. They may have just paid for their groceries with their Apple Watch simply by tapping with Apple Pay. They may have actually just had a new series recommended to them on Netflix, which they simply downloaded and started watching. So friction is the new norm. The benefits of reducing friction or having less friction in your business are pretty obvious. Less friction in your business leads to greater satisfaction. Less friction will lead to greater advocacy and therefore hopefully better referrals. And less friction is going to mean less disruption or chance of disruption of your business or service. So, friction isn't new. Friction has existed in interactions with businesses for many, many years, for decades even, and many companies have been focused on this concept of removing friction. In the 1970s, McDonald's removed the friction by making it easy for you to collect your 5,000 calories without even getting out of the car. Fast forward, they've done a deal with Uber Eats, and now you don't even have to leave your couch. But there's no doubt that digital companies really have mastered the art of removing friction from everything that they do. Robinhood, an online brokerage, removed friction by actually removing brokerage so you can trade for free. Spotify removed friction by allowing you to easily curate, download and manage all of your soundtracks. Seek made it easy to apply for a job and to manage and upload your CV. And Bookings.com identified that whilst there were many booking sites, it was incredibly inconvenient to have to put your credit card in at the point that you wanted to book the hotel. So you simply reserve your room and give your credit card when you arrive to check in. I'm not going to talk about Uber because I'll be fined, and eBay we'd all be extremely familiar with. Acorns, which is also known as Raise in Australia, removed the friction from savings by introducing roundups where they simply move money into your investment account. And the last one there, Overstocked, is actually really interesting. They're an online retailer over in the US, and they have somewhere between sort of 30 and 40 million hits a month to their website. They've become so good at removing friction from every interaction and from having deep levels of engagement with their clients that they've moved into a completely new industry, and they've launched a robo-advisor. And they've actually been really successful, and they've raised a lot of money. One of the things that's also interesting about that is that eBay didn't do it first. Although if Overstocked, an online furniture retailer, can do it, you'd have to suggest that Amazon's not too far away. And I'm just going to stop and talk about Amazon for a little while because Amazon are the absolute heavyweight champions of removing friction from what they do. And it really doesn't come as a big surprise that Jeff Bezos is now the richest man ever, with more than $150 billion personal net worth. Amazon looks at everything that they do and they remove friction wherever possible. The Amazon key. Anyone that does online shopping, which I imagine quite a few of you, would know that one of the biggest friction points of online shopping is trying to work out where to get your goods delivered. 2 years ago, it was simple. You got it delivered to work or to the reception area. The problem is now that every employee does that, and many companies have actually banned deliveries to reception because they were having to put on extra people and it was becoming a full-time job. So Amazon actually came up with a system whereby if you have an Amazon key, they can actually drop your goods into the boot of your car, wherever your car's parked. Likewise, they can also go to your home, and if they've got the code, they can simply put your goods inside your front door and then shut it obviously behind you. The Amazon Dash I've spoken about before, but now that Amazon's well and truly in Australia, we're going to start seeing these little buttons popping up. So in this example, the Tide button, you have a dash button sitting on your washing machine. When you run low or run out of washing powder, you simply press the button and the next day your washing powder will arrive. And you're going to see these buttons all over your house. They'll be on the fridge for your milk, they'll be next to the toilet for toilet paper. They are literally going to be everywhere. Now, why is this relevant? Because Amazon identified that, first of all, there was friction in having to add things to a shopping list. But more importantly, anyone that's ever shopped on Amazon, they worked out it was incredibly inconvenient to pull out your phone and to buy it with one click. So they removed 2 or 3 steps from the process. The Amazon Go stores, you may have read about, they're trialling them over in the States at the moment. There's no checkout counter. You basically walk in, grab your goods and leave. So they're using a whole range of technology such as artificial intelligence to identify what you've picked up, what you've put in your shopping basket, and as you walk out the door, they simply bill your Amazon account. Really amazing stuff, and it won't be too long before that becomes the new norm. And Amazon Prime Air, we would have all heard about Amazon's drone delivery service. They're trialling this. Unfortunately, they just got their license in New York knocked back. Obviously, they're not quite ready to have all these drones flying up and down sort of Main Street. But Amazon, they don't give up easily, so it won't be too long before we start seeing drone service again become the new norm. But the other key point that I want you to take away today is that removing friction from your business is not about making massive wholesale change. Removing friction is about identifying spots in the customer journey and making small changes that remove friction and provide more enjoyable services. Fernwood removed friction by not only removing men, but they also were able to identify that the friction point for Fernwood was that a lot of young mothers were finding it hard to work out because they had nothing to do with their young children. So they put childcare centres into their gyms. Really clever stuff, and I've seen some financial planning firms around the country do the same thing where they're dealing with accumulated clients. Again, just making it easy for your customers. Also, anyone that's been shopping in a large shopping centre that didn't have these lights, it can take you ages. It can take you 20 minutes to find a parking spot. And so they came up with a system whereby they simply put a red or a green light above the empty or vacant spots. And again, to solve that whole problem, you can drive in, find a park easily, get your shopping done and get out. Okay, so we're all experts on friction now. It's time to look at advice. Again, I think everyone in this room would agree that the advice process is absolutely riddled with friction. In fact, it's bloody horrible. So what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to walk through the customer journey. I'm going to overlay it with some of the things that the industry are doing from a technology perspective to try and solve some of these pain points. And I'm going to crystal ball. I'm going to look at some technology that's already in existence and think about how it might actually integrate with our industry and how it might remove those friction points. And when I start talking through some of these examples, rather than discounting them immediately, I want you to stop. And I want you to think. I want you to think, what would happen if this actually occurred? What would this mean for my business? And how might this technology integrate into my current service or offering? Because the industry's got a real problem at the moment. We're simply not thinking big enough. We're focused on all the reasons why we can't do things. We're focused on regulation. We're focused on compliance. And as an industry, we really need to start thinking bigger than that. Because over in the States, and this is a theme that kept coming out over and over and over again, they're trying to solve massive problems. They're trying to make us live longer, and they're succeeding. So how as an industry do we make sure that we actually start to think beyond compliance, think beyond regulation, and solve some of these problems? Because if we don't, we will lose relevance. So hopefully this is a journey that you can relate to. So what we've done is we've taken the customer journey and we've simplified it. And we're going to look at prospecting, discovery, advice, implementation, engagement and education. For time reasons, we're not going to look at periodic reviews today, although a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about also relates to that step of the journey. So the first step is what we call prospecting. Another point I want to make. A customer's journey is not about you. It's about the customer. It's not about becoming more efficient. It's not about driving profitability. It's about delivering fantastic experiences. So at the prospecting stage, it's actually your client researching. Your client identifies that they have a problem. They're listening to colleagues, they're talking to family, they're talking to friends, and they're searching online. And they're completely overwhelmed with the amount of information that they've received. They really don't know where to start, and they don't really know what their problem is. One of the big problems and one of the big friction points is that the information that they're getting lacks credibility. Worse, when we actually manage to shortlist, or when our prospects shortlists down to a couple of financial planners, we make it really, really hard for them to meet with us. We all work 9 to 5. The majority of our clients work 9 to 5. So how do we remove that friction point? And again, how do we make sure that those prospects are actually coming to our websites and that we're showing that we're credible? So currently, 56% of advisors are updating their website regularly. So that is putting new content on more than every quarter. So that means that 44% aren't. So there's a couple of problems with this. Going back to that friction point, we want to show that we're a credible organisation. Timely, relevant information on our websites will help with that. But worse, if we're not updating our website regularly with new content, Google's going to de-rank us. So we'll end up on the 3rd or 4th page. You won't even end up in the top 10. Likewise, if your website's not responsive, Google will do the same. So Google wants to make sure that when their clients are searching for businesses, that they deliver them to the best. And these are the things that are really important. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who uses advisor ratings in the room? Okay, it's even less than 23%. Can I also get a show of hands who's used TripAdvisor or an online rating service to look at a hotel or a restaurant? Okay, 100%. So why is it so low? Why aren't more advisors using advisor ratings? That's how we operate these days. I won't even risk $20 on a movie without checking the Rotten Tomato rating, let alone my life savings. So let's get on to advisor ratings. It's a great way to remove friction and to provide credibility to what we do. And posting to social media, again, this is a pretty easy thing to do. And from a client perspective, if we're posting regularly, it might even just be sharing articles with a comment or an opinion. We're showing that we're we're involved in the industry and that we're looking at world events. There's great systems out there now which will allow you to basically pre-schedule all of your posts. So it might take you an hour a week, but you can schedule for the week or for the month. It's really important, and clients are increasingly looking at what we're doing and what our point of view is. Likewise, is anyone in the room using a virtual calendar organisation tool like Calendly or... Okay, a handful. So Ravi will talk a little bit more about it. This is a fantastic way to make it convenient for our clients. Once again, when I book restaurants, I don't ring up because no one wants to talk to anyone anymore. You simply go online, you find your restaurant, and you book in for the number of people at the time you want to go. Again, we're making it really difficult for our clients to book in to come and see us. The flip side of that, looking at profitability, I heard an advisor mention that rather than one of their staff members spending 1 or 2 days a week basically scheduling meetings and rescheduling with their clients do it directly now. So that person is now working on more valuable services and within the back office. Virtual meetings, whether you agree this is a great tool or not for ongoing reviews or for regular engagement, virtual meetings are a fantastic way just to have a 15-minute conversation with a prospect to explain what you do and to see if that you're going to be able to solve their problem. It solves time, removes that geographic barrier, and it's a really good experience. Okay, so the clients now, they're going forward with you. They're happy to proceed, and it comes to the discovery phase. This is a really, really bad part of the journey for a client because they're already completely overwhelmed. The first thing we do is we go and ask them to get a whole lot of information. We ask them to get bank statements, superannuation statements, insurance statements, general insurance statements, and they really don't know where to go to get all of this information, and they're not really sure why you're asking them for the information. In many cases, your client actually doesn't understand the question. They're coming to see you because they don't understand the jargon, they don't understand what they don't know, and yet we're asking them to do things that they can't. Likewise, I don't have the answer to ability, so they don't have the ability to answer the question. And Eleanor's going to talk about this a little bit more in her presentation. But think about the risk profiler. How does a client possibly answer what they would do if the market fell 20% when they've never experienced the market falling 20%? They're just not capable of that. And again, we're asking them a whole lot of questions that they simply don't understand. They might also be embarrassed. They might be embarrassed because they don't know what you're asking. Or if we're asking them to complete a life insurance questionnaire, there's some pretty challenging questions and we're really probing into their personal lives. So how do we make it less confronting for them? Do we look at things like tele-underwriting or online forms? These are key friction points. Moving forward, there's going to be a whole lot of really fantastic ways using technology that we can actually overcome a lot of these hurdles. And we're starting to look at and talk to the advice industry about what we call Nextgen Profiling. So how do we start to really understand our clients on a multi-dimensional basis rather than just a one-dimensional basis? We need to understand more than their financial information. We need to know their demographics, attitudinal and behavioural beliefs. The tech companies these days, so Google, etc., on average know about 5,000 things about us. That is, they have 5,000 different data points. The research would suggest that if we knew 30 data points about ourselves, we would know ourselves better than we know ourselves today. So with 5,000 data points, it's pretty incredible what can occur, and I have absolutely no doubt that that's how we've ended up with Donald Trump as president and situations like Brexit, because people are using those 5,000 data points and they're influencing people and they're working out who can influence other people, and they're able to really change behaviour. So some of the things that are operating today, open bank data, we're going to hear heaps and heaps about this over the next 12 to 18 months. It's already happening in the US, already happening in the UK. And basically this is where banks will need to share their data with whoever you want them to. At the moment, there's groups like MyProsperity, MoneySoft and recently NetWealth that allow you to link in all of your bank accounts. So going back to that friction point earlier, why wouldn't you get your client to simply enter all this information before they even come into your office? Put in your bank details, it'll pull through all your loan information, it'll pull through all your banking information. So before they even walk into your office, you'll be able to tell what their combined incomes are, what their individual incomes are, what their salary contributions are, what debt they have, what they spend each month. All of these things that most clients actually don't know, we can very simply work out by simply getting their bank information. There's also a lot of really cool stuff you can do with transactional data, which I won't go too much into, but they can actually risk profile you now off what you spend. So they can tell you if you're an introvert or an extrovert, depending on whether you shop at Gucci or Target. So there's some really interesting work being done overseas. Every 4 years we do the census, the national census, and then companies like Roy Morgan do overlays where they go out and they do 5,000 plus face-to-face interviews to basically enhance the data that they already have. In this situation, it could be, for example, Surrey Hills. So if you go to a website called helixpersonas.com, you can put in your individual address and it'll give you a profile like this on yourself. But in addition to sort of giving you things like your income, it'll tell you what their likes and dislikes are. So do they like to go to art galleries? Do they like books and flowers? And do they prefer to live in cities rather than on farms? All of these things are really useful so that when they come in to see you the first time, you can engage with them on their level. If you're putting images on your website, brochures or in your SOAs, it'll also give you an indication of the type of images that they're likely to relate well to. So do they want family photos, fast cars, wine? Again, it's just about personalising what you do to their personal situation. Social media data, LinkedIn's a fantastic place to understand your client before they come in. I'm sure many of you check it. It'll give you their current occupation, it'll give you past occupations, therefore it'll give you an idea of their salary. You can look at other people in their network that you might know or other people that might be able to influence them. Now that Microsoft's bought LinkedIn, we're going to start to see LinkedIn data popping up through all sorts of our Microsoft applications. So when you receive an email, it'll sort of be front and centre. And likewise, if you're using Microsoft Dynamics as a CRM, it'll be tightly integrated, so you'll be able to do a whole lot of really interesting sort of data mining. The other thing about social media is using artificial intelligence, you can again start to get really rich profiles about your clients. So IBM Watson has got a social media analyzer, and here's an example of some of the profiles that come out of it. This is a well-known female celebrity. Using a social media feed, and this is an important fact, I think, if you look at social media, you think, how can you possibly profile someone? No one's ever posted a photo of themselves having a crap time on holidays. We tend to see people through real rose-coloured lenses. So what it actually does is it looks at the companies that they follow, it looks at the things that they like, the posts that they like, the other people that they follow, and it's able to build out these really rich profiles. So if, in this example, you can see that this individual is agreeable, that they're conscientious and they're open, and that they've got a fairly balanced emotional range. You can see that they like movies, that they've got traditional values. Now this is, of course, Oprah Winfrey. So you can start to see how relevant this information is and how useful it would be to understand this about your clients before they even walk in your door, but also when you're designing that ongoing service package. Likewise, IBM has a service called Tone Analyzer, which is available online. My colleague wrote an email into it to see how it worked. Typical financial planning inquiry, I'm a middle-aged parent, 2 young children and a large mortgage, etc., etc. From this very short and simple email, we're able to quickly tell that the individual is an extrovert, fairly agreeable, tentative, and not overly analytical. So when you're pitching to them, you want to make sure that you keep things relatively high level, but that they are going to be agreeable, they're not going to be a challenging client. And also from an ongoing service perspective, if they write into you, you're able to see how upset they are about a particular situation or how happy they are about some of the work you've been doing. Data collection. Currently 33% of the industry is using an online fact find or risk profiler. So that means that 60-odd% are you doing it the old-fashioned way, with a pen and paper. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that we don't have to do this, but is that first hour when you meet with a client really the best time to be working through a checklist? Shouldn't you be spending that first hour getting to understand the client, building rapport, trying to understand what's important to them, what their values are? Get them to do all this stuff before they come in. Moving forward, I'm really hoping that off the back of this roadshow that someone's going to start doing their fact find and risk profile via chatbot. So chatbots are starting to pop up everywhere, and I'll talk about them a little bit more, but effectively a chatbot is an online survey. They're not hard to set up and they're relatively cheap to have developed. The beauty about a chatbot is that A, it lives in your client's environment. Most people have a mobile phone and most people are using Messenger or some sort of a social media app these days. But more importantly, you can inject personality into it. If you're dealing with accumulators, you can use emojis. But you can also put links. So as you're asking questions, you can ask them, does this make sense? Do you understand? If the answer is no, you can redirect them to an article that you've written on that particular topic to help them walk through in a more sort of conversational manner. This is another risk profiler that we saw over in the States. It's out of Berkeley, so it's, it's built on very sound academic principles. And by chance, the AFA actually sent out an email promoting it. It's called True Profile, and it's worth having a look at. But basically, they've set out to not only create a very in-depth research tool, but they've sought to gamify it. So going back to my earlier friction points that most people are sort of nervous about financial services that don't understand, by gamifying finance, it becomes enjoyable. They're going to feel more confident about the experience. And what it does is it's effectively a game of trade-offs. So what would you like, this or that? Would you be comfortable if you made that return if you're going to lose this? So all the things that we sort of understand as risk have been gamified, and it's a sort of sliding scale. Okay, so we're finally through the discovery phase and the client still decided to go ahead. Friction points. Most advisors typically take somewhere between about 4 and 6 weeks to deliver an SOA. And the client has absolutely no idea. They're sitting there wondering, why is it taking them so long to provide this advice? The flip side of that is that there's a fantastic site over in the US called Personal Capital. They do a lot of the things that we've talked about. So they collect all of the banking information and debt up front before a client joins for an advice meeting. They then have that advice meeting online via a virtual meeting. But what they used to do was at the end of that virtual meeting, they'd press a button and it would basically generate the plan on the spot. Problem was that clients weren't seeing any value in it. So well, how tailored can it be to me if you're simply generating it that quickly? So they now set a timer, wait 3 days, and then send the document. And now suddenly clients are feeling far more positive, and the satisfaction scores have gone right up. So it is always a balance. But why is it taking so long? There's a lot of technology coming out, and I'll show you some in a moment, to help narrow the time that it takes to produce an SOA. When they do get the SOA, they're completely baffled. The strategy is too long, it's too confusing, they don't understand it, and they want to know, does it actually link to my objectives? They're also looking at all the disclaimers. Should I be worried? Why are there so many disclaimers? What do these all mean? So the SOA process, I think, needs a lot of work. Not surprisingly, 47% of the industry believes that technology is going to enhance this part of the advice journey the most. So this is one of the advice tools that I've come across. The disclaimer is I am an early investor in this particular service, but they've identified a pain point in the industry and they've solved it using some really cool new technology.
Hi there, and welcome to Nod's demonstration of our AI-driven statement of advice generator. So we're going to log in, we're going to check our dashboard to see if there's any jobs that we're working on or anything that we might need to finish off. There's nothing here, so we're going to go ahead and create a new SOA. We start by uploading a fact find in either a Word, PDF, or CSV file format. Hit upload. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to interact with a really basic chatbot around what strategy we'd like to put in place for the client. So in this case, we're going to change some insurance. So we'll hit add. Not quite happy with how that reads. Would like to be a little bit more specific about how we're prompting the AI. So we're going to add some more text here around what we're trying to achieve for the client. And then what's going to happen next is the AI is going to go ahead and use the company's historical corpus of statement of advice documents to produce new text in real time that is completely tailored to this client. It's in your template, your structure, pre-approved language, and it includes all the product comparison tables, product recommendations, everything that needs to go into a statement of advice, and that happens in real time, which is an amazing user experience, as I'm sure you'll agree, and will allow you to spend more time with your clients more often, less time writing documents.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So it's not pitched at solving complex or overly holistic advice. It is very much focused on scaled advice, but certainly our research would suggest that the majority of advice actually being delivered in the industry is somewhere around 50%. So from an ongoing perspective, as well as just that single issue advice. And again, Eleanor's got some fantastic information and some statistics on that. Okay, this is one of those ideas that I was talking about when I said I was going to crystal ball. A new reality, virtual reality, augmented reality. This was massive over in the States. In fact, it's one of the areas that's getting the most investment at the moment. Fantastic if you're a gamer, which I'm not. Fantastic if you like to be fully immersed into movies. But when you start to think about the applications for financial planning, they're not so clear. So we started to look at it. We did some research online and we discussed it with some colleagues. And we found one interesting example, which was Fidelity Labs, so obviously part of Fidelity International. And they've created an interactive review. So you walk into your review, and when I say walk in, you put on your virtual reality headset. You're met at the counter by an avatar who then walks you around your portfolio, and you can actually interact with the different assets and learn about those assets and see how they're performing. So from a Fidelity perspective, it's fantastic because it removes frontline staff, but from a client perspective, it's also a pretty good experience because all of a sudden, what was potentially a fairly dry portfolio review has become highly interactive and totally immersive. So we started looking what other technology was available, and this is some technology that's currently available via Facebook. I'll play the video and then I'll talk through some of the things we're thinking about.
Hey sis.
Hey Jack, are you all excited for our trip?
Yeah, and look what I found.
This is so cool. Is this the same spot we're going to?
I hope so. And look, I think that's where we're taking the boat tour.
Oh, I love it. Look, I'm gonna go chat with Melissa, but you're setting up the party room, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Great, see you later, Jack.
All right, see you later.
Bye. Hey girl, guess what?
What?
I got the apartment.
Wow, nice. Look at your balcony.
I know, it's amazing. No roommates. I have it all planned out. The lucky blue couch.
Okay, so I think you get the idea. I still smile when I watch that video. So how does that actually relate to financial planning? So again, going back to some of those earlier friction points, wouldn't it be fantastic if you could remove anxiety and geographical challenges where your client gets to choose where they meet you? Where are they most comfortable? Do you want to meet at my house? Do you want to meet at your office? Or do you want to meet at the beach? It's all possible. You can invite your lawyers in, you can bring the accountants into the party room. And obviously your clients will be sitting there with their paddles, but it's the first time I believe, again, that you can totally immerse a client in the decisions that they make today. And what I mean by that is that if you can highlight that if a client picks a conservative portfolio, that they're going to suddenly be living on a beach shack at the age 65 versus the high growth portfolio where they might be drinking champagne on the bow of a luxury cruiser, your clients are able to experience and to see firsthand exactly what those decisions mean to them in the long run. And again, I think that's pretty cool. Now, that's clearly not going to happen, I don't think, in the next 12 months or so. But again, I'm really waiting for the first financial services company to start using Facebook Hangouts as a way to deliver their services. Implementation. Quick show of hands. Who has a printer at home? Okay, it's probably about half the room. I don't have a printer at home, and every now and again when I need one, it's painful. I have to go to Officeworks, or I've just found out that the library on my street corner has one. But a lot of people simply do not have printers these days. And yet, what do? We send them a whole bundle of emails that they have to then print off, sign, scan, and return. Where do they do this? Do they do it at work? Do they have to go to Officeworks? So we need to look at how we overcome that friction point. So first friction point, another document to sign and print. They also don't have great visibility over whether or not the advice is implemented. So we've delivered the SOA, they've finally found a way to print off, scan and sign all the documentations, but they don't know what happens from that point onwards. So we need to get better at articulating and giving them visibility over that process. Digital ID. At the moment, only 32% of the industry are using digital signatures. It's far too low. Now, I recognise that a lot of the responsibility also has to sit with the product providers. They need to accept digital signatures. But moving forward, there really is no excuse not to be using more and more digital signatures because the experience for your clients is just so much better. KYC, there's some fantastic services that are being used now and that we're looking at integrating, like Green ID, where you can do KYC electronically. With Green ID, you can take a live selfie. So I suggest that you aren't in the photo with them, but what it'll do is it'll actually loop it back to the Green ID database and do their KYC without any paperwork. Again, removing a huge amount of friction for the client, but also making your business far more efficient and ultimately profitable. Managed accounts. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to show you the stats, which is pretty staggering in my mind. 3 years ago, about 10% of the industry were using managed accounts, 20% were thinking maybe, and the rest were saying, not for me, not interested. Fast forward to 2020, 61% of the industry is looking at adopting managed accounts and using it as their business solution. This has changed massively, and there's a whole lot of reasons for this. I guess one of the beauties about managed accounts from a friction perspective is that your clients aren't having to constantly sign and understand ROAs and return paperwork. From your business perspective, it also means you're not having to then implement all that individual investment advice. One of the criticisms, though, is that managed accounts can potentially disengage your client from the advice process. So they're not aware that things are being rebalanced, they're not seeing the value you add, and they're effectively outsourcing that decision-making process to you. To overcome this, and I apologise, this is a little bit of an infomercial, but it just really highlights a point. We came up with a service called Smart ROAs, where you can set up a range of model portfolios. You can attach a client or 1,000 clients to those models, and then with a couple of clicks, you can rebalance those clients. At that point, it sends an SMS or an email to your client, telling them there's an advice document online. They log onto the website, there's a beautifully rendered record of advice. They simply hit accept, and at that point, all of the transactions automatically flow through to market. Much better experience for the client, far more efficient for your back office. My colleagues hate me telling this story, but having launched it, the first bit of feedback we got from the market was, that's fantastic. Can you generate a PDF so I can get my client to sign it? I understand that it takes time to change back offices and it's not going to be the ultimate solution. But if that's the first response that we're getting, and yet we're sitting there complaining about regulation and compliance, and we need to adopt these tools and we need to have open mind about how they might work within our business. Engagement and education. This is probably the most important part of the advice journey, and this is where we can really add significant value to a client's life. So this is about making our clients sort of better investors, better savers. It's about helping them become more financially literate. So a lot of our clients, though, and this is the friction points, they don't understand the information that we give them on an ongoing basis. They don't understand the information when they log onto their online portals. They don't understand the review documents. So how can we make it more interesting and more engaging for them? And how do we make sure that we're constantly communicating that if anything changes in their life, that they need to speak to you first? Getting personal. Email, not surprisingly, 95% of the industry uses email to communicate with clients. I have no idea what the other 5% are doing, but my guess is they didn't understand the question. But the point on email is that inserting a client's first name is not good enough anymore. not in an age that we live in where everything is hyper-personalised and customised to our individual requirements. There is no excuse anymore to be sending articles about accumulators to retirees or retirees to accumulators. We need to make sure that every communication is delivered to them where they want and on topics that are of interest to them. This brings me to my next point, omni-channel advice. This is something as an industry we need to get far, far better at. So the easiest way to explain omni-channel communication is my mum. So she's reasonably computer literate, but on any given day she'll send me, she'll share something on Facebook, she'll send me a messenger message, she might text message me, she might email me, and she might call me on the phone. So that's 5 different channels. May or may not be about the same topic. Now, this is not that different to any of our clients. So we need to be able to cater for the fact that our clients are going to want to communicate with us on all of these different channels. And the reason that they're communicating on all these different channels is because it's what's most convenient at the time. If my mum sees an article on Facebook, she'll share it from Facebook because it's easy. If she's on her phone and she just quickly wants to get in touch, she'll send her an SMS. But we need to think about our CRMs, we need to think about our value proposition on how do we stitch all these different communications into a single case, and how do we make sure we're responding then back in the channel that they choose. Recently, I've had 2 fantastic experiences. I get about 5 minutes on a Sunday to do my admin, and I lost my Medibank card. There's no email on the website, the call centre was closed, and I found on Messenger that they had a Messenger app. I sent a message saying I need to replace my card. Within 45 minutes on a Sunday, someone responded and said, not a problem, your card will be issued within 2 days. Likewise, with ANZ, it was a Sunday, couldn't find the email address anywhere on the website because they've actually removed it because they don't want to communicate via email anymore from what I can tell. The call centre was closed, went onto their Messenger app, within 30 minutes had a response saying, I need to get some new statements. We can't issue you statements via Messenger, we just need to validate that it's you. Do you mind if we call you back at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, which was convenient for me. I spoke to them at 7 o'clock on the dot, they rang, and on Tuesday they emailed me my statements. It was an incredibly efficient and frictionless experience that I've now told around the country. And that was across Messenger, phone, and email. So this is happening, and it's happening very quickly. So start thinking about how you're going to respond to your client. Bringing strategies to life, again, how do we help engage our clients? Not everyone loves data tables. I'm a very visual person. I like graphs. So we start talking about things like dynamic asset allocation and tactical asset allocation because we can implement these strategies now using things like managed accounts and smart ROAs. But that really means nothing to a client. But we can visualise it. So that asset allocation chart, if we show on a month by month or a quarter by quarter, how their asset allocation is actually moving depending on current events, suddenly they're going to understand what it means and they're going to understand the value that you add to that relationship. That graph sort of in the middle, account balance over time. We're constantly talking to clients about the fact that they don't need to worry about their account balance being volatile, but we don't give them any other information to focus on. So visually, it's very easy to represent this by simply showing an income line through the middle that shows, yes, your balance might be volatile, but you're getting paid every month the amount that we agreed. So start to look at how you use graphs and visualise information better in your business. The other thing is around financial literacy. There's a plethora of ways now that we can actually provide education to many, many people. Video is a fantastic way to do it, and a lot of our clients are now actually on YouTube. And they're watching how-to videos, and that's where they watch their TV shows, etc. Canna Campbell, I don't know if she's in the room today, may or may not be. She has an online service called Sugar Mama. So she does 2 videos a week. The production quality is good, but it's not fantastic. She certainly doesn't have film crews. She films herself on her bed in the kitchen, having breakfast with her kid, and she's talking about issues that affect women and how they can become better savers or become more financially independent. She's got 94,000 followers. Now, even if she only converts 1% of those 94,000, it's a pretty good business. Likewise, podcasts, webinars, how-to videos, these things are being absorbed at a huge rate. I heard a great quote the other day that said, podcasts are like opinions, everyone has one, but I wouldn't let that deter you because they are a really good way to actually communicate with a lot of people, and they're not hard to do. You need a $600 mic because the sound is really important, and if you have a BDM, a client, or just anyone interesting that comes into your office, ask them if you can ask them a few questions for 15 minutes and then send that out to your client base because it'll be timely, it'll be topical. And the beauty is that you can then take that podcast, which may be 15, 20 minutes, you can send it overseas using a service like Rev. You can get it transcripted for a couple of dollars, which is another bit of content. And then on a site like Freelancer, there'll be journalists who will then take that transcript and turn it into about 10 articles. So all of a sudden, you've taken what was a 15, 20-minute exercise and created content to put onto your website to make it more relevant in a matter of minutes. The last one that I want to leave on is next best action. So this is starting to happen throughout a range of industries, and certainly we're seeing a lot of it over in the States. So using AI, you're able to now, and in this scenario, IBM Watson, you're able to delve into your client base, or the AI is able to delve into your database and basically generate ideas for you, or next best actions for you to do within your business. So Salesforce now offers this, Microsoft Dynamics offers it, and we're looking at how we can sort of use our data on the NetWealth platform to generate the same sort of ideas. So it might be as simple as checking that your client has changed job, got a second job, or quit their job because all of a sudden the source that their SG normally comes from changes. It might be looking at their regular contributions amounts, and if it goes up, they may have got a pay rise, they may have got a bonus. If it stops, obviously they may have lost their job. We can also start to look at things like attrition. Who might be at risk? So if they haven't logged onto the website for 12 months and suddenly they log on 5 times in a week and download a withdrawal or change of advisor form, clearly there's an issue, and we can start to surface that information. Really good example over in the States, a father went down to Target and absolutely ripped shreds off the store and said, "Can you please stop sending my daughter maternity promotions on nappies and clothing?" And it turned out that Target knew that his daughter was pregnant, 16-year-old daughter, 2 months before he did, just using the data that was available and her online behaviour. So next best actions, what are you doing in your business to actually start to use all of the information available? Because as financial service professionals, we have access to more data than most industries to really understand your client base and to take action in a timely and relevant manner. So that's the customer journey. I've hopefully identified a couple of pain points and sort of got you thinking about some of the areas that you might be able to improve in your own business. We also recognise that removing friction can be challenging, mapping out your customer journey can be challenging, and so we've created an innovation toolkit. It's a free toolkit, and if you're interested, you can register for it on our stand. And basically, it's got a whole lot of case studies, it's got a whole lot of workshops, it's got how-to guides, and we've got some really good playing cards that you can basically use with your staff to try and identify the best and worst experiences within your business and start to identify how you can improve each of these journeys. And lastly, if you haven't received our Advice Tech report, it's a fantastic report to read through. We've surveyed over 300 advisors, and we've looked at 26 different areas within an advice business that we believe can be enhanced using technology. We've then given you a short list of all the different technologies that the industry is using, again, so you can start to remove friction. So thanks very much. I hope that's been interesting. Really enjoyed the roadshow and hope to keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.